In this third video, we're going to talk about how to craft your mini retirement story, which is your very first step in negotiating a month off. Oftentimes, my one-on-one or group coaching clients have this fear of how is my mini retirement going to be viewed professionally by my boss, by future employers, if I request this time off or I take a career gap. And we start filling in kind of the adjectives like, well, people think I'm flaky or lazy or unmotivated or not disciplined or not resilient. When in reality, what we need to start with is crafting the story ourselves. You need to be in charge of the narrative of what this mini retirement is, what it means, what the motivation is, and how it reflects on you. There are two rules of writing a memoir, and we will apply those memoir rules here. The first one, it has to be the truth. Everything you say has to be true. But the second rule to writing a memoir is that it can't be the whole truth. Not in that it's untrue, because first rule, it has to be true, but in that there is no memoir, there is no 80,000 words that can encapsulate the entire truth. So your mini retirement story that we're crafting, it is entirely true, but it's not the whole truth, because the whole truth is just too vast and it's too wide and it's too nuanced and it's too complex. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to pluck out the true elements, but condense them. So what we're going to do is we're going to pluck out the true elements, but condense them. So this will not be a 127-point story. This will be a 4-point story. Keep it nice and simple. And the 4 points of the story is that it's going to be positive, interesting, specific, and a one-time event. And these can be helpful. Perhaps all of these elements are already in the mini retirement you're planning. But this can also be a little bit helpful on the planning side, because if you don't have one of these 4 elements, maybe there's a way you can include it in your month off. Maybe you can make a slight pivot to make these 4 elements present and visible and highlight them in your story. So let's go into each of these 4 and I'll give you some examples. The first one is positive. This should be an upbeat and inspiring kind of mini retirement. And this is true even if the circumstance is kind of difficult. If you have a family member that's sick, or you're recovering from a personal tragedy or a personal trauma, or you're burned out, if you think, well, this whole thing is negative, it can still be really good to create a positive spin on that and view it in a positive light. For example, if you're really burned out, you can say, life and work has been kind of crazy these last 12 months. I'm really excited. I've planned to do this silent retreat, or I'm going to this yoga retreat. And I think these are going to be really restorative and really bring me back to that baseline, because I really want to come back at 100%, where I've kind of been feeling like I'm always playing catch up. I just want to be at 100% and be able to go fully back into kind of my work professional life. And I think this month is going to get me back to that baseline. So you're taking something that's difficult, or let's say, your mom has Alzheimer's and you have to move her into an assisted living community. It can be a really painful, difficult thing. But to say, I've been trying to juggle this personal thing that's really painful and emotional and logistically challenging alongside work. I think it's going to be better for work and for me if I just take a month, I really focus on this, enjoy this time with my mom, enjoy this process as we make this transition, and create some good memories while she's, as vibrant as she's going to be. And then when I come back to work, I'll have all of that wrapped up and I won't be distracted or kind of torn between going back and forth. So you take something that's kind of difficult, but show the positive side of it. The second component is It's great if it could be something interesting. Is there something compelling or fun or exciting that you can do? For example, let's say your ultimate goal is to spend more time with your kids. But instead of being like, I just want to be around my kids more and I want to, do some fun stuff with them, highlighting something interesting. Maybe that's we want to go to 6 different, theme parks to ride roller coasters, or we want to go to these 3 national parks. Something that's kind of compelling and we'll lead into, but maybe something that's specific or a one-time thing, but it creates interest other than just the overarching goal. Even if it's something as simple as like, I want to read more. Could you make it an interesting and compelling goal? Like in 4 weeks, I have 12 books that I would love to read. And you kind of have something that's a little bit more interesting. So in your story, is there an element that could be interesting and you could highlight that? Our third thing is something specific, a specific event that you could do during your mini retirement, especially if it encapsulates the theme of your mini retirement. So for example, in my upcoming mini retirement, which I might be on by the time you listen or watch this, or it might be over, I decided to take a month off and learn tango, just go all in on learning tango. And one of the specific things I'm going to be doing is going to a tango festival. And so finding something that is specific, like say you want to do more running, maybe there's a marathon that comes at the end of this. Or when I lived in Germany, I went to see the Passion Play, which they do every 10 years in Germany. I had studied German for 4 semesters, and then I went to this very specific thing. So finding something that encapsulates the general idea, maybe you want to get better at yoga. Could you add in a yoga retreat that you're going to be going to? Versus just, I'm going to be hanging out at my house and doing more yoga, which leads into the fourth element that you'll want in your story, preferably, if possible, a one-time event. Something that isn't necessarily reoccurring, but does define like a specific moment in time. Like I'm going to be training for my 50th birthday. I've always wanted to do like a Ironman or a triathlon. There's one in Hawaii that coincides with my birthday. I would love to spend the month training for this and then go to that Ironman event. Very specific, one-time kind of event. Or if you say, my dad for his 60th birthday, he always wanted to hike through Ireland. He's turning 60 in a few months. I would love to accompany him on that trip. Or for my honeymoon, I want to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. Don't have enough vacation time for that, but if I could get a couple extra unpaid weeks, for our honeymoon, we could do this specific one-time, positive, interesting kind of activity. And this does a couple things. Like it gives a sense of urgency to it because there's this one time really specific thing that's happening, but it also lends to the idea of this will not necessarily be every year. Not every year are you going to hike Mount Kilimanjaro for your honeymoon. Not every year are you going to hike through Ireland with your father for his 60th birthday. These aren't things that are reoccurring. They are more of a one-time occurrence that can kind of maybe nudge you closer to that yes. And one little bonus idea, if you work in an industry that has a very specific culture or very specific concerns, thinking about that ahead of time and maybe sprinkling that into your mini retirement story. For example, if you're in kind of like, we want people who are all in or super focused, it's like very kind of work hard, play hard. Say like, I love this company. I love this culture. I love work being my entire identity. I just have this one thing I need to do. I have this one thing I need to go and focus on. I don't want to try to do work-life balance. I don't want to try to incorporate it. I would rather just go get this thing out of the way and then come back here and be all in and super crazy about work, just like all of you are. And so you can take kind of those concerns and maybe show how this mini retirement fits into that company culture or that industry kind of vibe. So this is our first big step. Before you start having these conversations, you need to have this right in your own head. Write out the stories. In the free worksheets, there's space to, and examples of what these conversations look like. Write this out before you start having this conversation with your boss, with HR, with your friends and family. Make sure you feel really comfortable talking about it and framing it in a way that's positive, interesting, specific, and hopefully a one-time event.